My name is Megan Haslak, and I'm your firm's national client representative, which just means I handle virtual training for Westlaw, Practical Law, and Form Builder, among other products. So um, I don't have my contact information on your screen. I couldn't get it up there today, but I will follow up with an email. So if you do have questions after today's session, feel free to reach out to me anytime, and I'm more than happy to answer questions as they come up or, set up individual training or kind of whatever is needed. Just let me know. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to be going over Westlaw Form Builder. So we'll talk a little bit about how Form Builder is being used to now build those judicial council forms that you were previously using Legal Solutions to build. So I'll go through some of the basics, talk a little bit about how to do things. We'll look at both judicial council forms as well as just a couple little things on jury instructions. As we go through, though, if any of you have any questions, feel free to just shout them out, interrupt me, let me know. This can be interactive. I want to make sure that you're getting all the information that you need to. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share out my screen and we'll get started. All right, so you should hopefully be seeing my Form Builder login screen. I'm starting here because it is a separate website that you have to come to get this access outside of Westlaw. So this is just forms.westlaw.com. So when you come to that site, this is the page that you're going to be brought to, and then you're going to log in with your 1Pass username and password. If you don't have that set up, don't worry. We did just request a bunch of registration keys for your group, and so that will likely be coming if you don't have that already. But if you do already have Westlaw access for any reason, that's going to be the same username and password that you're going to use here. So no new credentials that you have to learn for this one. Go ahead and hit sign in. You will likely not see this page, but you will see this next page where you're being prompted for a client ID. Your firm is going to have you put in some sort of matter number or client number. They should have information on what you need to put there. So if you do have questions about that, check in with somebody in your library or others in your group. I don't have that information. I just know that they are going to have you put something in there. So when you hit continue then, your client ID is always going to be up at the top here. So that can always be changed during your session if you need it to be. But other than that, this is going to be your Form Builder home screen. This is where you're going to jump off all of your form building. A couple of things to note in terms of how to find content on this site. You'll notice probably right away that you do have a search bar up at the top. One thing I want to note about that, however, is that with that search bar, it actually only searches the titles of our forms as well as the form number. So it's not going to search the underlying text of each form. So just keep that in mind. For that reason, I typically find it easier to just browse in and find what I'm looking for, which is what I'm going to do for the demonstration today. But you certainly, if you do happen to know the form number or anything like that, you can always plug that in here and that will help bring it up too. So since you guys are in California, I'm actually going to go ahead and jump into California here. Keep in mind though, if you are ever looking for forms topically, you have that option here as well. But California is where you're going to find the storehouse of all of those judicial council forms, as well as California jury instructions. So if this is the page that you find yourself coming back to the most frequently, you can always make this your start page, and then you will see this when you log in. And then if you ever did have to get back to that main home screen, you could always click the Form Builder logo, and that's going to take you back there too. So we're going to jump into some of those judicial council forms in just a moment, but one thing I want to note that I always recommend that you guys do when you are looking at those specific judicial council forms is a preference that you're going to want to set before you build any of your documents. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of your page, you're going to see this preferences link. When I open that up, the first thing it takes me to is this general tab, and you want to make sure that this box that says apply my download format is checked. Under your default settings, it's likely going to be unchecked. What this does, judicial council forms are considered graphical forms, they're PDFs. So if you were to have this box unchecked and then you download a form that you just built, it's going to download a PDF that's not able to be edited. So if you check this box, you're going to get all your forms in Microsoft Word or WordPerfect if you happen to prefer that. But that's going to allow you to edit them after you've downloaded them from the program. So it just makes your life a little bit easier, hopefully. The other preference that I always recommend people take a look at too is this firm information tab. So you may see information already pre-populated here. It may be completely blank. If it is blank, I recommend you fill it in. This tab, anything you put in here is going to flow down into all of the forms that you build. So it's going to save you a bunch of time, typing your firm's address over and over again, or your email or things like that. So definitely strongly recommend taking a look at that too. All right, so we'll go ahead and save our preferences, and then I'm going to jump into our judicial counsel forms here. With this, we're going to get a list of everything, but keep in mind, if you know that you're just looking for litigation, for example, or other types of forms, you can always come in and get a narrower list by topic that way too. So when we come into this list, you will then see a list of all of our judicial counsel forms. Over on the left-hand side, however, you have filters so you can break it down even further if you came into this larger list. So I'm going to go into the litigation results, but keep in mind, regardless of your topic, the process is going to remain the same across all the forms. So first thing that you want to do when you are building these forms, you will see a case profile page or form, quote unquote, for each of the different types of form sets that we have available. So this is where you're going to want to start. Case profiles are not necessarily forms so much as they are kind of a storehouse of information. So you want to create one of these case profiles for each of the different clients and matters you're working on, because it's going to allow the system to pull information from here each time you are drafting forms for that particular matter. And then again, you're not typing that same information like the court number or the case name or the case number. You're not having to type that over and over again. So when you come into the case profile, just like any other forms, as we'll see here in just a few moments, you're going to come up to build in order to walk through the process of putting in this information. First thing it's going to ask you for is your client and matter. So it's going to default to seeing my clients. That's going to be any client that you set up. So you can see under here that you have a list of clients, or if you've never created any, you won't see anything there. If you are going from a pre-existing client that somebody else in the firm has built, you can click on all clients, and then you're going to get a list of all of the clients in the firm that you have access to see. By default, when somebody sets up a matter, you're able to see it. So you're likely going to see just about everything that's ever been set up for the firm too. But if you come in here and you see, you scroll through that list, you don't see the client you're looking for, you can always add a new client from here. Pretty straightforward process. It's going to open up a new window to ask you to fill in some information. You can do so for an individual or for a business. We're going to go ahead and just set this up here. Fill in additional information. Any of this information that you fill in will also filter into your form, so that can help save a lot of time too. You can just save the client, or you can go ahead and save and add a matter. I'm going to do that at this point here. So we'll say a corporation here today. Only thing that's required here is your matter name, but again, you can certainly give it a matter number and so on. One thing I will point out from here is that, as I mentioned, by default, everybody in your firm can see all the clients and matters that are set up. But if somebody needs to be sectioned off for conflicts purposes or for any other reason, you can come in and click on Save and Edit Matter Permissions and turn off that person's permission to view the matter. It's not terribly common that you'd have to go into there, so I'm not going to go through it. It's pretty straightforward. But again, just so you know, that's where you can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and save my matter, and then it's going to bring me back to my client and matter selector here, but it's going to default back to the ones that I just created. So I'm going to go ahead and use those and hit continue. So now it's going to take me into a series of questions where I'm going to fill out my case profile. One thing you want to be aware of as you are answering these questions is that you do want to fill this out as completely as you can, and you want to answer the questions in order, because any answers you are giving it right now, it is going to be it is going to affect questions that it's going to ask you down the line. So you want to make sure that you're filling in whatever, you can, so that you're not missing any critical information that maybe needs to be filled in. So I'm actually going to go ahead and tab through all of this, give it some information. You can see that because I picked my county and my courthouse when I was answering questions, it's already filtering, or it's already populating that rather, so I don't have to type it. Go ahead and some information here. Give me 1 second as I go through. So like I said, you'll see how this kind of fills in later. Okay, perfect. So once you hit, and I'm just tabbing through that whole form too, so just so you're aware, that's kind of how you can do it too. Then when you get to the end of your case profile, it's going to ask if you want to download the form. With this, you probably don't really need to. You probably don't need that information to be saved, but if you do need to download it for some reason, you certainly can do that there. But then when I hit done, that's saving all of the information that I just put in, and it's associating it with that client and matter. So now when I go back to my list and I start building forms, it's going to pull from that case profile and populate all that information I just gave it. So from here, you can see the list of forms that we have. It's pretty extensive. I think there's, 500 some in litigation. There's lots and lots of others in other topics. You can absolutely go in and just click on one form at a time and build one form at a time if that makes the most sense to you. But one thing I want to show you too, there is a benefit to building multiple forms at once if you know that you have to do these anyway. As you are building these forms together rather than individually, if a question is asked in your first form, for example, and then that same question needs to be answered in your third form, that information is going to be pulled when you answer it in the first form. It's going to be pulled into the third. So it's going to save you a bunch of time to build these together because it's only going to ask you, it's not going to ask you for repeat information, if that makes sense. So from here, to do that, you can go ahead and just check the boxes next to the ones that you want to build. So I'm going to choose these 4. Now, if you are building these same forms each and every time you open up this new type of case, whatever it is that you're working on, you can also save these forms to what's called a form set by coming up to this little icon and saving it to a form set. So I can later access this. Say formation. I can later access my form set from my tools up at the top here. So I can come in and say, today I'm doing a formation. I know I've got to draft those 4 forms. I'm going to go ahead and just select them from my form set so I don't have to manually go in and find each and every one of them each and every time I'm doing this. But whether you're building one or whether you're building all 4, you're going to go ahead and just click build just like we did before. And that's going to walk us through the same similar type of process. So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to choose the client and matter that I just set up today. There we go. And when I hit continue, it's going to open up those forms and again, pull information from that case profile as well as my firm information tab as we saw at the beginning. So you can see it's populating already my, which county I'm in, which courthouse I'm in. Additionally, when I check a box here, if it's asking for this same information in a later form, I'm going to see that pulled into that later form. You can see we're building all 4 at once, so I'm seeing form 1 of 4. If you have a multiple page form, you're going to see these little green arrows highlight or light up so that you can switch between the different pages of your form. Check some of this information too. If you need to put additional information into your form that is not already called for, you can add a text box here and then drag that around anywhere on the form. So when I put that in there, you'll see that added to the form too. So that gives you a little more flexibility in terms of what you can actually add. So change your font, the size, the type, etc., using your font up here at the top. Then you're going to want to go on to your next form. So now, because I checked that this was a complaint and not a cross complaint, you'll see that that's checked in this form. You would see any other information I filled out in form 1 also pulling through here. Go ahead and hit next form. And then when you get to your last in the set that you're building all together, that next form button is going to change to a download button. You do need to download these. It's going to open up some different options in terms of how you deliver this. If you need each of your forms to have its own file name, you're going to want to leave this on multiple files or a zip file. But if you want to download these as a one merged file so that it creates just one document for everything, you can choose merged files, and then it's going to give you a list of everything you just built. You can then drag and drop those to reorder them as needed. Or if you decide, I only need these 3, I can remove them as needed too. But then when I download this, because I applied that setting at the very beginning to have my graphical forms downloaded in Microsoft Word, I'm going to get a Word document with all of that information that I just built. From there, as I mentioned, of course, you're able to edit the form just like it was any other Word document. One thing I do want to caution you, though, it may seem very straightforward, it may seem very obvious, but I do get the question every once in a while. If you do edit the form once you have it downloaded to your computer in Word, that information is not going to flow back into the program. If you need it to be saved on Form Builder, you do actually have to open up the form and put it into the system. But this allows you flexibility. If you're up against a deadline, you don't want to go back into the system, you just want to change something here, you can certainly do that too. So now when I hit done, all of those forms are then saved with that same information to my client. So I can come up to that client that I just created up at the top here. We'll go into Anderson Co. We'll go into our matter. And now we have that list. We have the case profile. So if I need to go and edit that information, I can. And then we have the 4 forms that we just built. From here, a couple of things that you can do in order to return to these forms and then rebuild them. One of the things that is really nice about this program is that it allows you to kind of bulk edit your answers, if that makes sense. So if I go in and it turns out that one of the clients has moved, one of the parties has moved, and so we need to update their address everywhere that appears. You can open up this matter the way that I've just done here and come up to your options menu and click Edit Matter Answers. That is going to show you all of the questions that you have answered for this matter, and it's going to allow you to change any of that. So maybe we typed in XYZ Co. They're actually XYZ Inc. I'm going to save that, and then when I go back, I'm going to close that, and I rebuild all of these forms. I'm going to select those forms. I'm going to click Build. And now I want to go to review prior answers. That's then going to pull through all of that same information that I said that I answered previously, but anywhere that it asks for XYZ, it asks for the defendant name, it's now going to refill that with XYZ Inc. as a whole. So you don't have to go in and manually find, okay, where is everywhere that I typed in that defendant's name? It's just going to update that for you. And then the same process applies. You're going to get to the end of the forms, you can download them with that new information. The other option you have from here is to create a new version. So if you have a form that maybe you have to serve this complaint on multiple defendants, so you have to address it to each of the individual defendants, but in general, the information is the same other than the name on it. So you want to rebuild the same form, but just change one piece of information. You can check the box and just build that form. When you open just one at a time, it will also give you the option to create a new version. So it will automatically select that you want to review your prior answers when you do that. You're going to hit continue and then it'll open that same form. And maybe now this is an amended complaint. We'll just change some of the information through this form. When I go to exit, however, because I created a new version, I'm now going to see that second version listed in my list of forms here, and they're now marked with V1 and V2. I can now come in with this little pencil icon and say, this is defendant number 1, and this is the complaint for defendant number 2. So you can mark which one is which, and you'll know that every time you go back into the program, so it makes it pretty simple to kind of differentiate. that covers most of the core functionality. The other thing I did want to point out for you guys, because I know that you at times may be building jury instructions too, the process almost identical. You're going to go through, you're going to, check the boxes next to the jury instructions you want to build. You can build one at a time or multiple, but there is one thing that I do get the question on frequently, so I just want to point it out. When you come into this list of jury instructions, it's going to first, you can see it gives you the list of the different pattern instructions. More than likely, you're going to know which ones you need to build, so you can come in and find those. You can see the numbers listed here, so you know which ones to expand and go find the ones you're looking for. But sometimes you are not doing pattern instructions, you are doing custom instructions. When that is the case, you want to come down to the bottom here and look for user-defined jury instructions. Basically, this is going to give you the option to build 10 blank jury instructions at a time, so that you can just type in whatever custom instruction that you are requesting, and it will, allow you to type in whatever you need. Jury instructions will also ask for some different information than the other forms that we saw. It's typically pretty straightforward, but again, if you ever have questions about that, certainly reach out to me. There is also reference attorney support for all of Form Builder. You'll see this 800 number down at the bottom. Reference attorneys are 24/7. So if you ever have a question and you can't reach me, do reach out to them as well, and they can always help walk you through that too. Right. So with that, I think that covers everything that I wanted to cover. Does anybody have any questions? All right, well, hopefully that means it's perfectly clear. Like I said, going forward though, if anything comes up, I know it feels a little different sometimes when you're actually in the program and using it. So if anything like that comes up, do reach out to me. Let me know. I'm happy to answer questions or set up additional trainings. I did, as I mentioned, I also recorded this session. I'm going to go ahead and stop that now. But if